Good afternoon. It's 1 p.m. You have so, in your own nice way, given us time today to talk to you about what I titled Lessons Learned in, I can't remember, what did I say, in the midst of a pandemic. So I grabbed all of our AQ fellows, me being one of those, at the, I will say suggestion, at the encouragement, let's say encouragement of the provost, to convene a meeting and share some things that we learned. I titled this a workshop discussion, mainly because I really think that we all probably have some things we could share about this term. And so I will, during our time here, ask for questions, ask for comments, ask for discussions. By no means are the 8 of us the experts at anything, but we certainly took some time this summer and spent it doing some work with AQ, and it did take some significant time, and I appreciate the other 7 that participated in that. I assume they're all here. We'll see when it comes their time, but we'll just sort of proceed on if that's all right with all of you. And I am going to start by sharing my screen here, if I can make this work just like I want it to. Just a moment here. There we go. I'll, because I'm a control freak, I'll control the meeting just a little bit, and I will turn my phone off as well. And so what were the lessons learned? Well, we'll see as we go. First, let me just thank all of you for attending, because I know we finished our finals, and it's almost like, well, let's just give up the rest of the year. But there are lots of things that we want to do to prepare for next term, and I think next term will be something that we don't know. I hear promising things from a vaccine that was rolling out this weekend, supposedly, but we don't know anything. And so I would say that we want to prepare ourselves to to have to teach online, or to teach in, we definitely will teach online. We'll definitely teach as high flex, and we've got to be prepared to go on all online, just like we did last term. I've heard in a number of seminars that I've participated in of a lot of efforts, much like we have done here, to encourage everyone to to become better at teaching online, to become certified, to go through training. Some colleges have the capabilities of paying people to train, or to engage in something different than we did, but we certainly, all of you, that is, deserve a lot of accolades for spending a lot of time training, preparing yourself, trying to become better at teaching online. So one other thing I might mention about going forward, Dr. Burstein made the statement. I don't pick on him, but Dr. Burstein made the statement at some point in some meeting that he thought we ought to become the teaching institution. For hold on one second, and I will see if I can't mute somebody. There we go. So the teaching institution of the USG, to be known for that. If I've turned that wrong, forgive me, Dr. Burstein. But I know the provost, Dr. Knighton, has mentioned that in a number of ways. How do we do that? What's the best way to do that? I certainly think that if we are going to set a mark to become the premier teaching institution, that we certainly should include our online instruction and our capabilities there as well. So I thank you for attending. I know a lot of you are very good at teaching online, even though you've attended this session. So please participate. One of the goals, besides becoming better at teaching online, is to encourage everyone to share this with your colleagues. Share them with the colleagues on our campus. I mean, you certainly could share it off campus, but share with your colleagues in your department, the people around you. There are lots of people that don't have the capabilities you do. They haven't spent as much time teaching online. They don't know all of the tools. Autumn can't do everything to put out information. She's one person. She puts things out in a certain way, and it's wonderful. We appreciate her effort, but it takes consistent, just messaging. So just keep that in mind. What we will be doing today, thank you for letting me take some of your time there and introducing us, but just a little bit about what we'll be doing. Tips in online course delivery. I expect some of those things to come out. I know I'll talk a little bit about that in comments I have. Do's and don'ts. I think that will come out as well. Having sort of talked to most of our ACU fellows before today, and sort of knowing what they intend to talk about. There are always do's and don'ts, and I did. Okay, good. No, I don't think that. Yeah, that's good. All right, and then great pedagogical ideas. We're always looking to get better. So one of the things that we'll focus on is promoting active learning online. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What we won't talk about today, so I'm making this off limits. I don't want to talk about proctoring. I'm pretty much sick and tired of proctoring. I would like to leave that alone for, a few weeks and maybe bring it up again. It may have been a good thing for you. It may have been a disaster for you. I would tell you, I apologize if I did something to let that fall down, but I would just tell you it's a struggle everywhere. That's what I'm hearing. We're familiar with the company called ProctorU, who I think really has somewhat of a good heart or good intentions, but it's just not working as well as we would like for it to. I think it's something that our campus will need to engage in, as well as every other campus as well. Know that I have complained to everybody and anybody that would listen outside of our campus about proctoring, but I prefer not to talk about that today. Let's keep this an uplifting discussion as much as we can, and an encouraging discussion. All right, just a little bit about, we've used this term ACU, so I just thought, well, I'll tell everybody what it is. Association of College and University Educators, founded in 2014 by higher ed leaders. It has a very close relationship to ACE, which we know is a very reputable group, and I just want to let you know that. They do a lot of training in teaching. And they are interested in making teaching better, both online and in the classroom. Our team, this is the list. They spent 8 weeks this summer. Some of you maybe, in your reading and you're listening and seminar attending and professional development, you've heard a lot about badges, micro credentials. So ACU did provide those of us that attended a micro credential. Maybe they provided us a couple of them, but I know I got this one. and it's sort of a new trend in trying to acknowledge real learning that's taken place. I've seen it discussed in a lot of different venues. Also, but for sure, professional development. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just now making sure I read the chat. So I'll try to keep check on the chat as well. I'm not as good as I need to be at doing Zoom presentations here. So let's move on. What we learned, just to let you know, there were 6 modules that we engaged in, and we did a lot of work on those modules. Some of us probably spent a little more time than others on certain aspects. I will tell you there were specific things I was looking for as an individual instructor. I was very much interested in the discussions issue, but I haven't fully implemented that in my classes, but that was sort of my thing. But all of the information was really good and very timely. So I just want to share that with you. And knowing, going and stopping here for me and going to the next person and see if I got this right in the correct order. I'd asked Dr. Johnson to take some time and share. I had an order that I put them in, no particular order other than I just sort of picked it. So I'm going to let her go first, and I'll follow her, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Dr. Johnson, do you need permission to share?
That would be fun if you would do that, yes.
Okay.
Well, I took notes on 3 things that I learned this past semester. And the first thing was that I saw a marked difference between the attitude of the freshman, sophomore, and the junior and seniors. It's like the junior and seniors, they get their assignments, they know what to do, they get it done. And I had students turning in semester-long projects 2 and 3 weeks early. The freshmen, particularly in the online class, felt like they didn't have to do anything, and you just breeze in and take the exam, and oh, you failed it, well, that's not a problem. Just breeze in and take the final. And they did, no assignments during the semester. So of course, when they got the failing grade, it was a shock to them because they thought that something would happen, a Hail Mary pass from the week of final exams. And so I learned that there is a marked difference between those two. I also learned that 50% of the students are not going to read the assignment. And I'm tired of fighting it. I need to just adjust. And so I'll tell you what I did to work on these 2 issues. The third thing I learned this semester was that students like us have some real life challenges. And I'll mention some things that I did in that area. So to address the difference between the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior as far as their expectations, I went to some meetings with K-12 instructors in another county and just listened and find out that, they're trying so hard to help students get through, and it's rough, and yes, and so they're just passing them on through. So it was almost like it's dog training, and if you sit up enough and roll over and play dead, you get the treat and you go on to the next level. And so we're getting some of that now. So it's not the student necessarily, it's what they're accustomed to. K-12 high school classes particularly are backloaded, which means you can fail all semester and you can do the Hail Mary pass at the end and then pass the class with a B average. Get your Hope Scholarship. But anyhow, we have to deal with it. That's our student population, so we have to deal with it. So the two items that the students are not going to read, and they have different philosophies of what their learning should look like. The way I addressed those, one was to revamp my lecture notes, because I realized they were not running a PowerPoint show, and I'm putting all of this time in doing these animations and these links and these in lecture note videos, and that's not how they use the lecture notes. They save it, they scan it, they get to a section they don't know, and then they go read that part of the textbook, which is fine if it works for them. So I made it a lot easier on myself by lightening up on the lecture notes. Another thing I did was to really narrow down tightly my objective for that week. So either my objective was a philosophy introduction change, or changing their thinking, or to introduce a new tool, or to have them apply and use a new theory or model. But I just narrowed it down very, very tight. And that's what I focused on. So there was a lot of extra things that they didn't get, but they got the main objective for that week. So what I did was I added more content to D2L. I did the micro lectures that you'll hear more about later, and 2 to 3 minutes was my maximum. So lectures was 2 to 3 minutes. My videos that I found on YouTube were 2 to 3 minutes. I found news stories 2 to 3 minutes. If I had them read an article, it was no more than a page long, because again, remember, they're not going to read it. So, and it had a lot of headings, etc. they could scan. So I put in more content. Obviously, the students that accessed more content had higher grades. What was the third thing I did? I added more content. I made it short, 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 short. The news stories were a big hit. I really like those. So those steps sort of address the difference in philosophy or the different approaches that the students had when they came to the course, as well as that they're not going to do the reading. So I entertained them through other ways, or I got them to have the content through other ways. The third one was students have some serious issues, and I just wrote down some quick things, just fall semester. I had 161 students fall semester. I had 142 projects to grade last week. 62 of my students reported to me that they had tested positive for COVID. About a third of them were asymptomatic. A third of them had mild, what we'll call mild symptoms, and about a third of them had some pretty severe symptoms with lingering side effects. So there was the first one. 3 families or 3 students had family breakups where the dad or mother or the boyfriend, somebody moved out, and it was a major upheaval in the student's life. One student had his father passed away, and he had to settle the estate and probate the will, etc. I even had a student that emailed me and Dr. Kwl together that he was homeless. For 4 weeks after the midterm, he was homeless. He had no internet connection. He was homeless. So the students have some real challenges. So the 3 things I came up with was, first of all, reach out. So I would email. If they didn't respond to my email, I went in a banner and I looked up their phone number and I called them. And those phone numbers are not always up to date. I talked to some parents who gave me their students' cell phone numbers. That was their choice. But I reached out. So reach out, and that's where you'll find out a lot of information. The second thing I did was not to immediately try to fix problems, but to show compassion first. So when a student emailed me that said, you know, the exam locked up in D2L, rather than say, okay, I'll go fix it, I would say, I'm sorry that has happened to you. That has to be frustrating. So I'm working at showing empathy first and then fix the problem. And the third thing I did was to create some, I still don't have the option to show my screen, Rick. I'll just tell you about it. I created introductions to the week and in D2L. And on October the 14th, it was the birthday of Winnie the Pooh. And it just struck my, I don't know, attention somehow. And so I went and did some research on it. And Winnie the Pooh was created by Alan Alexander Milne. You've heard that. But what you might not know is that he was a World War I veteran. He was suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. They called it shell shock back then. And when he came back from the war, his son was born 4 years after he came back. And his son, of course, was Christopher Robin. And Milne couldn't hold a job. He was so traumatized and so, I mean, just any kind of upheaval, he couldn't function. So the child being born was almost his sanity. And he took the child to the London Zoo, and there was a Canadian black bear there that the child just fell in love with. And the bear's name was Winnipeg. So Milne saw himself in that bear, and he created the whole Winnie the Pooh story around that. So in essence, out of trauma and a negative experience was born healing, as well as joy for millions of children by Winnie the Pooh. And that was 100 years ago. Winnie the Pooh was first published in 1926, so almost 100 years later. So, and I had more students respond to that. In the post, I also included the trailer to Christopher Robin, the movie, and the students just loved it. And more students sent me emails talking about that. And so I thought, I'm going to do that more often. So each week, I gave them like a short inspirational story that connected to either the content or to the day of the week, to just help them feel like there is good in this, and we can move on and we can learn from it. So those are my 3 things and my 3 ways I am working on changing them. So thank you, Rick, for letting me go first. You're muted, Rick.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, no, I got it. I think I'm learning as we go. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, Brenda's got something she's got to attend to today, so I appreciate her going first. I had intended to go first, and I intend to say a couple things now, so that all the other smart people can come after me and make it better. But thank you. Anybody got a question for Brenda before she ducks off? Comment? Thank you. I think we all would agree that it's just a very trying time for everyone, and you know, especially for our students. And of course, there are lots of things they don't tell us. You know, we a lot of times have the, you know, I'm going to speak for myself, have the worst in mind when someone presents to me an excuse for not doing something, but in fact, a lot of times they don't want to tell us all the things that are going on in their life. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. So thank you very much. So let's move on. I hope for the other participants today that I've made it where you can share your screen when it gets your time. I think I've done that, but if I haven't, you can let me know and I'll try to fix that. So I've got a couple of things I want to talk about. I'm confess I'm not going to really talk so much about what I learned with ACU as much as what I learned a little bit about teaching what I'll call high flex. I know all of these terms that are thrown at us right now are a little, you know, weird. Maybe you don't feel like they've been being applied in the correct manner. However you feel about that, that's fine. But I'm going to talk about what I would consider high flex, because that's what I feel like I had to do this term. When I say high flex, I taught a class in the classroom at 8 o'clock Tuesdays and Thursdays this term. It was a computer course. It was introduction to Microsoft Office. We call it introduction to management information systems. At one point we called it Introduction to Business Computer Systems, but we cover Office. We spend a lot of time talking about Excel in the class, pretty good significant amount of time talking about database with Access. And I use a textbook that is an electronic text that provides students the opportunity to turn in homework. So I've taught this class online. I taught it this term as a high flex class because we could only have, I believe it was 17 in the course, and maybe we could have more than that in the classroom. I had 34 in the class. That's right. And I split it up into 17 each. I believe we could have seated 20 students, maybe, distancing. So we had to break the students up, like many of you maybe had to do. And so, I approach this as something. This is new. Haven't had to do this before. And we were given the option at delivering courses in a number of different ways if we did things in what we'll call high flex. And so what I chose to do was split the class and broadcast the course. And when I say broadcast, literally I'm using our technology with Blackboard Collaborate to broadcast what I'm doing in the course for the 17 students coming on a Tuesday to the ones that were going to come on Thursday if they wanted to be online with me at home and do the work. So, it was a challenge. It really was. It was new, like anything. And so I was trying to think of things that I would tell someone who hadn't done it before, and you were planning to try to do this in the next term. What is it you need to think about really as you go into it? Because, teaching is teaching. Teaching online, you're trying to deliver content. Teaching in the classroom, you're delivering content. That part you understand much better than me, I'm sure. Anytime you're doing something in a new classroom, when you're teaching, in person, you go into a new classroom, you've taught in the same one for a long time. Maybe you taught at the same institution for a long time, and there's all these things that are designed for you at that institution. You go to a new institution, you got to learn new things. I liken it to this, but it's a little more than that, isn't it? And so, I just sort of picked out 3 things that I thought about as I was doing the high flex and going back and reflecting on what had transpired. And I can't put enough emphasis on the very first thing, preparation, that I had to do, because I told the provost this one of the first days after my first class, or maybe my first week, and I don't know if he remembers, but we were in a meeting, and I said, look, I had done all this work, all this thinking and prepping and getting everything in line, and I still didn't feel prepared. Just because it was new. And so it is something that, and I think we have to realize when you're doing something new, there are going to be things that go wrong, right? And that kind of falls under the everyday presents its own challenge. But the preparation part, I can't emphasize enough. Try to think through everything that you're doing, and if you get a chance to go practice, go do that. So preparation, practice, and know that you will be presented challenges. And again, these are no really different concepts than what you'll be, saddled with in the regular classroom, or changing from one classroom to another. What I would tell you is, you know this, assume your students aren't prepared. And that's something that's a little different than a face-to-face type of environment. We do that face-to-face, right? come in students to the class and you say, have you read the material? No, of course not. So you try to develop activities and things they can do to try to mitigate that and try to, you know, encourage the learning. And of course, you're encouraging them to be prepared. But it's a little different in this type of environment, right? Because you're not just dealing with the fact that maybe they didn't prepare with the material, but maybe they haven't prepared with the technology either. So you do the best you can to try to encourage them to do that. Now, one of the things that I did in my course, and I'll show you this just because I know that we have a range of faculty interaction with technology on the campus, even though we've all been through the training, you know, and gone through Autumn's work, and we got our badges that she created for us in D2L, which was very nice. Some of us still aren't quite as knowledgeable as others, quite as good as others. Maybe we haven't engaged in every little piece of technology. So I'll show you just a couple things that maybe can make a difference. Maybe you get a chance to practice over the Christmas holidays after you take a little time. And so the, you know, one of the things that I did right off the bat was, and I didn't do this today, so I appreciate somebody doing this for me, was recording. And, you know, you have to think about those things. You have to make little lists. You know, what is it I need to do when I walk into the classroom, since you're doing things so much differently than if you were just doing face-to-face. And that takes a little time and a little preparation. And when I say practice, it also may be in your best interest to go early to the classroom, go a day before, a week before, and say, okay, I want to take some time and see kind of how this works. It takes a lot of time. We're so used to, or at least I was as a professor, sitting in my office, sitting at home, wherever I am, prepping and being able to just deliver the way I wanted to deliver. You know, you're dealing with such a different type of environment. It's also very important that you sort of try to think about, as a student, what is it that I need to be, you know, prepared for? What is it I have to, you know, have as a student to you know, participate in the class? You know, for me, that was a little bit more than maybe some others, if they were just participating in a lecture, you know, just sitting there and taking notes or noting, you know, all that great information you were giving them. Yeah, my class is more participatory. I'm trying to demonstrate things for them. And so I know I had to anticipate a lot more about how could I get a file to the student for them to practice on? How can I make sure they're engaged in what I'm trying to get them to do in the class, and show me that they're engaged in it? So those things took a lot more planning than I was willing, or not willing, but ready to do. So it just took a little time and a little getting used to for me to make that work. One of the things I didn't anticipate, well, I should have anticipated, I guess I didn't anticipate it being quite as difficult, was class management. You know, in my particular class, I know some of you have noted to me that you don't even know if students are out there. They log on. If you're delivering the class in high flex and you've got half the class in front of you and you're looking at them, and the other half is online, and you can see their names on the side of the screen that they're online, but they don't have their picture showing, they don't have the camera showing. Yeah, how do you know they're engaged? There were times I didn't have that problem. I had too much engagement, and it was difficult to manage sometimes. People, you know, I'd hear voices come over the speakers, you know, wanting help and those kind of things. And, you know, it may be, depending on the type of class that you're teaching, you have to set some boundaries, just like any normal class. And so HighFlex, it was a good experience for me. It just know that it takes some time, takes a little bit more preparation. You know, it is a good idea to practice your skills because you're not used to doing those things. And then in terms of every day presenting a challenge, it seemed like every day I walked into the classroom, there was something set up with the technology a little different. And I confess, as much as I feel comfortable with technology, when things aren't the same, it throws me off, certainly. And it happens. And so I would tell you that it would happen to you as well. It's just something that you have to be prepared for as best you can. But there will be challenges. And of course, we had COVID going on, so there were all kinds of challenges, right? Where maybe you didn't have the stuff to clean the desks off, or a student came in that they didn't have a mask, and just different things like that. Those were challenges we certainly didn't want to have to deal with, but we did. So without taking a lot of time, I just thought, those are things that I experienced in my HighFlex type of class. Now, if you're not familiar with Blackboard Collaborate, and let me see if I can make this work quick. If you haven't taken the time to take a look at it, it's very, very easy. Autumn's got great videos out there. I'm sure Blackboard themselves, D2L, Brightspace may have videos related to Blackboard Collaborate. Probably Google it. But it's very easy. If you just go to Tools, Resources, and go to Blackboard Collaborate Ultra Web Conferencing, you can find this tool. This is my class from the fall. And if I go to Tools, Resources, and I know some people like to play with their menus and they like to change things, I just tend to leave mine alone. And I'm going to go to Collaborate Ultra, takes me right to it. But then, so that I don't have to mess up my Zoom session, I'm just going to show you a couple of quick screenshots that I took just to drive home the point if you haven't taken a look at it. Collaborate Ultra, nice web conferencing system. Is it as good as Zoom? I don't know that it is. Is it as good as GoToMeeting or Google Meets? They're different, right? But this one, the positive benefit is it's part of D2L. And I can't emphasize that enough. That's a pretty positive aspect, right? Because when you start the Collaborate Ultra session for your class, you can immediately record. And it walks you through a few quick steps, and it's very simple to learn. And if you haven't taken the opportunity to look at it, I highly encourage you to do that, because not only does it record, but it puts the recordings in a location where it's pretty easy for the students to find. Now, I say that, and I had students that, the last week of class, hey, where are the recordings that I had made all semester long, right? But where are they located? I said, you've got to be kidding me. I told you 3 times, and I made another video for you to find them. But nevertheless, it's pretty easy to find. I'll show you that in just a moment. But it asks you questions. You go right into recording, and without going through a screen or wasting your time with all that. It's basically got 2 side menus that where you can control things about your session. There's a what I call a purple button down at the bottom where you can chat and share your screen and do those kind of things. And then there's a black X over here on the left. It's 3 lines, correct? Is that right? 3 lines. Yes, 3 lines. What I've learned is people seem to call that the hamburger. If that's what you want to call it, you can call it a deli sandwich. I don't care, but they tend to call it the hamburger menu or the hamburger icon. And so the hamburger icon gives you access to starting your recording, and if you don't start it from the question, or doing other things that you need to, and then leaving your session. So, and it allows you to stop the recording if you're recording the session for your students. So let me just encourage you to do that, because Collaborate Ultra is very simple. When you have a session, it's very easy to create. Everything's just right there for you. When you finish, your recordings end up in a little hamburger menu for your students, and they're listed right where they can get to them, and it's all inside the LMS. And that makes it just very, very easy for students to try to get to and manage and find when they need them. Okay. All right, let's see, where do I need to be here? Sharing my screen. Other quick tips, and then we'll move on. This is something that probably will be ongoing discussions on the campus. I've had these discussions with Autumn, with others. I'd like to elevate the discussions a little bit more. In the online environment, it's important that students see similar screens. I mentioned at the beginning, Dr. Burstein wants us to be known as the teaching institution for USG. I would agree. That doesn't mean that I or anyone else gets to control what you do. But what I would tell you is, for the best learning environment, what I'm hearing from seminars I've been to, workshops I've sat in on, literature that I've read, is that when, if your institution, if you use similar screens, if you all are using very similar tools to deliver the course, it makes it better for students. They're able to learn better, especially with adult learners. That's what we hear. And that's not to say that all of you are using different LMSs or anything like that, but I would encourage you to use the LMS as the home base for the course. And then, as much as we can, use the different tools that are part of the LMS to its fullest extent. Which brings up another issue that I've talked about on campus, and I will talk about more, common templates. And some of you are familiar with eCore, and you've taught for eCore, maybe you're teaching for eCore now. And what you may know or may not know about eCore is they tend to build the course for you as a faculty member, and then you engage in the teaching of the course. There are things that you can modify and manage and change, but for the most part, they've created a lot of the course content, put it in the course shell, and then you go in and try to adapt, your own individual things that you want to do as a faculty member. That is a very, very common theme among some of the colleges across the nation that have engaged in a lot of online course delivery, where they get one faculty member or a team of faculty members, and they pair them with an instructional designer, and they put together a template for the courses in the department. Now, I know Autumn has shared templates with people before, and that's a wonderful idea. It may be controversial to you. You may feel like that's just engaging in something you don't want to go there. I would just tell you, we need to have that conversation. It certainly would make it easy as we hire people from outside the institution to become, an adjunct faculty member or a brand new faculty member. If we have to assign them an online course, that certainly would be a good model. But that goes to support this idea that students see very similar things, or the same type of content in the same place in the LMS. So just something to think about as we go. And this last thing, just as an individual faculty member, use the tools that are available. If you don't know something about D2L, I would tell you to take some time and look at it, because there are a lot of tools out there. And I see chat coming in, and I apologize if I've missed something. I would say that it's a very tool-rich LMS. Brightspace is not the best thing in the world. Some people, I know that some of the comments I got this summer from our ACU fellows was that they liked the LMS that ACU used. It's called Canvas. Some of you may be aware of a lot of different LMS types of portals that I'm not, and I understand. Brightspace can be a little clunky, but it does have a lot of tools. Some of you may hear about some of these tools as we go. So I do have a question from Christy. Can you define screens, backgrounds? So when I mean screens, what I mean is when somebody logs on to D2L and they see something, are they seeing something that's sort of consistent? And that doesn't mean necessarily you can't customize what you do. That's not what I mean by that. But when we set up a course, are we all using announcements in a similar way? Are we all using our content built out in a similar way? And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, and that doesn't mean everyone's going to do exactly the same. But are we going to all put our content and have a similar type of module where we have students start in a certain location? People are going to be doing that in a different place. With this particular course, I had a start here, but I didn't put that much stuff because it's a high flex course. They were going to come see me in class at some point, but I did post the syllabus. Are people utilizing grades in the course? And I know that could be a little controversial for some people. Maybe you don't want to use the grade book, but I would encourage you. The grade book is a good tool. So that's sort of really what I mean by that, Christy. And that's not to stop your individualization. So, yeah, thank you, Autumn, for posting that. So look, I talked enough. I took way more than my time, but that's the way I always do. So, but I won't be talking anymore. And so I'm going to stop sharing. And anybody got a question, unmute and just hit me with it. Silence is golden. Maybe everybody's eating lunch like I wish I was doing. Okay, well, thank you for listening. I hope that provided some insights. I'm going to move on, and I think the other presenters are going to be a little bit more specific about how some of the things they talk about. Dr. Bishop, I think I had her listed next, so I would like for you to unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes. Can I share my screen? Please.
Please try.
Okay.
Go down to the bottom and hit share screen.
I'm trying. Hold on a minute. Let me make sure I'm ready. I got all kinds of stuff pulled up.
I got it.
I'm working on it. Hold on. I'll try in just a second. Okay, so I want to share with you guys when I did do the ACU class over the summer. And during the summer, I'm going to attempt to share here in just a minute. During the summer, can you see that? Yes. Okay, good. So during the summer, I did teach in a class that was traditionally a face-to-face class that we taught online, of course, because it was the summer of COVID. And I attempted to do my best at engaging the students online in a face-to-face class done online. That's really what it was. And I did my best, and it wasn't bad. I had some good comments and good evaluations from the students. But one of the biggest things that I did see consistently, which was unusual for me, was that some of them didn't feel as engaged. They were bored because they felt like I read from the PowerPoints. And I probably did. You know, it was my first time trying to share with them short informational PowerPoints. By nature of the beast, nursing instruction is very lengthy. We have a lot of content and we just tend to be very mouthy and wordy. We've tried to do better and we are doing better, but it is very hard. And this online teaching makes it even harder, because what I have learned even after the summer and into the fall was that short and sweet is better. They don't have the attention span. I don't have the attention span to sit and listen to an hour-long lecture on online at my desk even, or I'm doing something in the background and I'm not paying attention. And so as a result, I think our students have not done as well academically in the classroom on test as they have in the past. So moving forward, I've tried to do better with my length, my time, and I'm trying to do those short online presentations, but that's not working. I can't do 2 to 3 minutes like Brenda did. I just can't do it, not yet, but maybe one day I'll get creative if I have to. Something I did do to try and increase my engagement in my students in the fall that I did not do in the spring, in the summer. In the summer, I very much created a PowerPoint presentation traditionally, posted it as I traditionally would post it, and then I did a voiceover to go along with it. So I had the PowerPoint presentation and I had a voiceover. And one of the things that I learned in the ACU classes that we took in the summer that was that if you give them an outline rather than giving them maybe the PowerPoint, it might tempt them to follow along the outline and make notes and to add things to it. And so that's what I did. That's what I attempted to do. Now my outlines were a little bit more detailed than they probably should be, so I'm working on that as well. But I wanted to share with you what I shared with my students or what I posted and tell you the results of that after the fall semester. So here's just an example. I do use Desire to Learn or Brightspace. I post everything there. All of our content for nursing pretty exclusively, I think, is posted in Brightspace and Desire to Learn. But I would create a PowerPoint presentation, and I think I'm going to try to show you this. I may have to, hold on a minute. I'm learning too. I'm going to share a different screen. Maybe let's do this. All right, so I would create a PowerPoint presentation, a traditional PowerPoint. This is just an example of one I created. And I would create my full PowerPoint presentation, and I would, once I've created that presentation, I did a voiceover, and I chose to use Screencast-O-Matic. So I would create a voiceover, and I purchased that myself. You don't have to do that. I know there's another option for faculty at Gordon. I can't remember the name of it. Rick can tell us in a minute, but where you don't have to purchase it yourself. But I purchased it myself because most of my presentations are longer than the short 15 to 30 minutes. I'm getting better at that, but I haven't perfected it yet. So I created my presentation. I taught as if I were teaching in the classroom, and I recorded it on Screencast-O-Matic. Now, rather than posting this for my students, I created the outline version of this PowerPoint presentation from the PowerPoint. There's a way for you to convert it into an outline. I'm on my MacBook at home. I don't do it from home. I do it from work. For some reason, it's easier there. But basically, you get an outline view and you save it in a Word document or a PDF document. I've done Word because my students can type into the Word version. And this is what I post for them. I'm going to attempt to show you. I think I have to share my screen again. Okay. Okay, I think I'm sharing my desktop. I really don't know what I'm sharing, but I hope it's the right thing. Can you see my Word document, Rick? No? Okay, let me try again. So this is, okay, hold on. And as you can see, I'm still learning myself. Okay, I think this is it. Here it is, yes. Sharing is being paused. I'm trying to share. Okay. Am I sharing? Okay. So this is my outline. Now, again, mine is not like it probably should be. Mine is smaller, but I need to work on it a little bit. But as you can see, what I do is I record my PowerPoint presentation, and I don't let them see me, because what I did find with Screencast-O-Matic and my home connection and my home internet, because I was at home a lot recording these on the weekends, was that when I tried to show my picture in the right hand corner and do the PowerPoint and talk and do for longer than 30 minutes, it was overwhelming the space that it required. And so I had a lot of issues with that. So I had less issues, technology issues, if I just recorded the presentation with my voice. And I did that, I saved it, and I have a link. It comes with a link. So rather than posting the presentation or posting the PowerPoint, I post this outline with this link. And so the student just goes to this link and they pull up the presentation. And I'll show you a quick clip of that in just a minute. But here's my outline. It comes directly from the PowerPoints. I didn't have to type this. It comes from PowerPoint. Sometimes I have to make the font smaller and kind of do the spacing because there's some spacing issues when you directly take it from your PowerPoint presentation. But what I did was, you can see that there's just bullet points here. And when I talk on my PowerPoint presentation, I elaborate on these things. And so what I'm hoping the students do is that they're filling in and in some of this. I also include things like case studies. Now, we don't do the case study online. Sometimes we do, it just depends on what's going on. But because of this high flex thing that we did in the fall, I would actually take the case studies in the classroom. So I would just give them a blip of it right here. Like I would say, this is a sickle cell case study that we're going to talk about in the classroom. His name is Jaden. He's 4 months old. And I kind of go through that. And then in the classroom, we carry it out. So we do an active classroom participation on this case study with Jaden. And so that's just one of the things that I did. But my goal is to have them writing on this, filling in the extra, filling in where I talk about things that may not be on the outline. And that was my goal. And what I do, and I'm going to try to share my screen again. New share, let me go to here. This is my D2L. This is what the students see. So when the students go to the content for that week and they pull up pediatric hematology, they'll pull up the outline, which is what I just showed you in Word. And then they pull up, they can use the link on the Word document to get to my presentation, or they can use the link here. I also post this link and it pulls it, it should pull it directly up. And they can watch, I'm not going to do much of this. So that's my presentation, which I did not give them, but I gave them the outline that goes directly with it. Okay, so at the end of the semester, when we looked at student evaluations and just feedback from the students, they liked the outlines. None of them complained about not having that PowerPoint. And historically in nursing, they want the PowerPoint. They want to print it out. They want to have it. You know, they've got 50 PowerPoint slides and they want to print all of them out. But these groups, I guess transition-wise, as far as, you know, being at home, being online, they did not complain about not having the PowerPoint, and they liked the outlines. They liked that they got the presentation at home and then came to class and did the case studies. And so I've got positive feedback on that as well. So I feel like what I did in the fall, using the outline and getting away from that traditional PowerPoint presentation, was better. I don't know if it's perfect yet, but it was better for me and for my students. And I will continue to do that. I will not, I don't know that I'll ever post PowerPoint presentations again. And something that I did, some students still reflect, you know, I use a lot of pictures and I use a lot of different things in my lecturing. And I don't give them the pictures of different assessment things. And I don't give them the NCLEX questions that we practice. Some things I don't give them because I want to do it in the classroom. And a lot of students would watch my presentation, and if they found a slide that they wanted to keep, they would do a screenshot of it. And that was their idea. I didn't think about doing that. And they would be able to keep that picture of that distended abdomen or whatever that I was sharing online with my presentation that I didn't give them to print out. So they found ways to keep the content they wanted, but it wasn't content overload or technology overload, I don't think. And so I feel like I had a positive response by just providing outlines and engaging the students that way. I feel good about it. I know I have some work to do, and I have to decrease my lectures. I also, by the end of the time the semester was over, if I had a lecture that was longer than 30 minutes, I split it. Now I know 30 minutes is still not ideal, but you know, if I could get it to 15 minutes 4 times, maybe. Small things, short periods are better. And it was a lot of work for me at home, but that's okay. You know, it worked out okay. It wasn't a bad semester, and I feel like all the nursing faculty felt the same way, that it worked out good. Does anybody have any questions about this type of, something simple? It's not much, but it helped me. It helped engage my students online a little bit, I think. Is there any questions, Rick? I don't know that I can see. Wait,
I didn't see any in the chat. Did anyone have a question for Dr. Bishop? We appreciate her sharing. And
yes, it was TechSmith Relay. I think Ryron, TechSmith Relay can be used to like Screencast-O-Matic. And then Autumn
That-
shared that Screencast-O-Matic has a free version but it's limited to 15 minutes. And yes, like Autumn said, I'm trying to get better at decreasing and maybe doing, peds hematology #1 and peds hematology #2. It's better for me too when I'm saving these things, because honestly, if you get 45 minutes into a lecture and something happens at home and the internet cuts out and you lose and I've done that more than once, you go crazy. Like you really want to lose your mind. Somebody wants the slide of the distended abdomen. That's funny.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is, and it would be easier to edit that way.
Yes, it is. And so, yeah.
In smaller chunks, it's easier to edit.
Yes.
The TechSmith relay is something that's built into D2L.
Yeah.
Under tools, resources, just something to keep in mind. You can also add things through adding content. The one positive that I've seen about TechSmith relay is the captioning.
Yes.
That is, that's an important thing. But but Screencast-O-Matic's a good product as well. I purchased it and used it before, so.
Yeah, and the only reason I haven't transitioned, Rick, honestly, is I've just got to learn how to use TechSmith relay, and I'm just not there yet. Some of that up front, I've got to learn to use it, and then I'll move forward.
Understood.
Thank you for letting me share.
So Lisa Ferguson asked, can you quiz in Screencast-O-Matic? And I don't know the answer to that.
Like a live active quiz? I don't think
Yes.
so. I don't know how to do that yet. No. I don't know how to do that yet. Right.
And I have not done that myself. I've done it limited in the TechSmith product.
I think it's more for just recording, maybe, because I know in Blackboard you can do live quizzes, like you can have, if you have live,
Sure.
synchronous.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. All right, Professor Calhoun, you're up next. Anyone, and before she gets started, anyone else got a question? I see great comments in the chat. Thank you for contributing to the collected knowledge. So thank you so much. All right, you're up.
I want to first show, if you can see this book, it is invaluable if you have not taught online, or if you're like me and you've taught it a few times before all of this. It is Small Teaching Online by Flower Darby with James Lang, and it is absolutely amazing. And you can just pick the chapters that apply to you. And I will say that I didn't use everything in this. I'm on my 3rd class of doing this one book. And I've learned something new every time that I've studied this book. So Small Teaching Online by Flower Darby. And if you don't know her, look up her video. She's amazing. And you can get it price $18 if you do Kindle like me, or you can do the hardcover like I just showed you for $28.45. So that's good. Or you can borrow some from some of us that have multiple copies. I wanted to just tell you a couple of things that I've discovered, and I want to share my screen and show you something. As somebody who teaches a lot of your students, and they are my advisees, I ended up getting a lot of the complaints you may not have gotten by some things this semester. My students that were absolutely lost in some of the classes. And it was a unique situation because I know you know that a lot of the students you had in your online classes never intended to take online. They had internet issues, and they struggled with knowing some things. So I thought I want to do things a little bit different with them. So I'll show you a couple of things. So I want to share my screen. If So I decided to create, instead of doing all written assignments, I decided to do some where they could post videos. They all love to do that. And the fun part is if they have the Pulse app, it was really easy for them to do. And I got much better assignments that way than having them do the rote you know, just generic posts. They were more honest with me through the videos, and especially throughout the semester, I enjoyed seeing them change. I did it in both my in-person classes that were, of course, split, and then I did them in my online. So this is just one, this is the last one they did for me. If I can get it to pull up. So they had to, one thing that we do in FIRE that I'm sure a lot of you talked about was grit. And we have a generation of students that just quit. And they think, like Brenda said, everything's going to be fixed for them. And that was something that I had students struggle more with this past semester than ever before, is just quitting. And so they had to tell me where they have overcome in their lifetime. And I got students that didn't turn in anything much all semester, and they did an amazing job on this. And so I'm showing you as a student, what they see is this. So when I go down, a wonderful thing, if you've never done this, instead of adding a file, which I know you all know about that, and recording an audio, which is a chance, I wanted to see them. So you click record video, and it's really easy if you haven't done this with a student. I didn't have any students have a difficult time doing this. And so they record a webcam video. And so because I'm sharing my screen, it won't let me do that. But they just click here and just do an honest video for you. And I found that after looking it up and asking Dr. Calhoun, that does count as one of our proctored assessments, because I saw the student, I could match them to their picture and know that that was actually the student doing the assignment. And some of the assignments were more detailed than what I just showed you, but they really enjoyed it. And I got a lot of feedback from students in email. And again, some of the students that didn't turn anything into me written, that was any, you know, a lot of content, did really well with this. So now I'm going to go back, if I can move this down, I'm going to go back to discussions. So one thing that as an advisor I struggled with, and Scott Schubitz knows that I had a lot of always alert referrals, and a lot of people in their problems with discussions would put that the student needs improvement in discussions. When I met with students, we would both just kind of, I don't know, what do you know what that means? And so I tried to think in my own classes, am I giving them enough guidance? So what I decided to do was, in discussions, I'm going to use a few things that might kind of give us a little bit more guidance. So when I go down, one thing that kind of helps, I don't know how many of you, and you can probably share with me, how many of you use, in doing a discussion, how detailed are you with your, what you require of them? I know a lot of us give 2 different dates, one for the initial post and one for the replies, but do you use a rubric? I found that that really helps me get better discussion posts, because I can give them more detailed feedback rather than this isn't long enough, that they just don't understand that. And then one thing from the Flower Darby book that I got is, another thing is model what you want. So one thing besides using a rubric is I give details, how many words I want them to create. And I also give them models of what I'm looking for. So when you look at my screen, you can see where I gave them an excellent post. This is what I'm looking for in your own words. If you use any quotes from the story, I need some documentation. And then I give them a bad one, which is, I get, you know, if you look at the bad one, we get a lot of those posts in our discussions. And it's not even meeting the minimum. And sometimes if I model for them what I'm looking for, I get just better results. And again, in creating a rubric, you just go here and edit the topic. It's slow. And then go to assessment, and then just create a rubric. And I know that Autumn has lots of resources to help you with this. And go here and just add a rubric. Create rubric or add one that you've already done. And that just gives them more detailed feedback. And with some discussions, sometimes if I feel like a student isn't reading my feedback, I record my feedback, and sometimes they'll open it. And then I also, after I get the discussions, I try to recap it, so at least they realize maybe what went on and anticipate. They can at least get some benefit out of what others did. And in the recap, I tell them, make sure you read the feedback, check the due dates. Again, just a reminder in the announcement. So when they pull up the class, they can pull that up. And then I also kind of recap what I got from the class. So each class is different in the recap. And it just kind of hones in that I am reading them and what I want them to get from these different posts. So those are the kind of three things, if I were going to tell you the three things I've learned, not only from my classes, but talking to students about what they kind of, maybe, I'm sure none of them reached out to you. It was just, when I asked them what was going on with a grade, they kind of opened up to me. And a lot of them, it's difficult for us to keep remembering that they probably have never done a discussion post in their life. They have no idea what we're talking about. And just giving them a lot more information seems to give them more guidance and helps us get a better product at the end. So, does anyone have any questions or comments about what you do?
I have a question about discussions.
Yes.
So one of the things that I don't like about D2L is that you can't put a due date on a discussion. You can lock it, you can make it unavailable, but both of those options make it to where you can't accept late discussions.
Yes.
But if you don't put a lock date or an unavailable date on it, then it doesn't show up in their calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, I can see that you are saying in number 1 here, check the due dates. How do you get across to them when the discussions are due, and do you have success with that?
I am, I'm insane. This semester, I sent every one of my students an email every single day because they didn't know what day they came to see me and what day they were at home. They didn't know what to do when they were at home. And in that, I would put it in the subject line. A lot of time when I had a discussion due, I put it in the, because I found a lot of them, if we check, they don't open our emails. So I know if it's in the discussion, in the subject line, due date, initial due date due, that I just got better results. So I know that's insane, and I text them too. I would put them in, and text them from my phone.
So Autumn posted something to the chat. It's a good point. I guess this is something we can continue the discussion about. It's a good question. I tend to want to have due dates for discussions, but
it just makes it extra punitive in online classes because, since you don't have attendance grades, then discussions do tend to be a higher percentage of the final grade. And so not having the opportunity to accept late discussions because of those functionalities, that's something I don't like. Yeah, I do have a due date document and everything, but it just, if it doesn't show up in that calendar when they log in on that global D2L homepage, like they know about it.
Yes.
Right. It's a good point.
Very
good point.
In D2L, you can create an item yourself, and you say due date for this. separately, and it's going to show up in their calendar.
That's a great point, Claudia. And I have used checklists before, and you can put due dates into checklists and then I guess link to the discussion.
Yeah, or
So
that.
I think I'm gonna. I did that more in eCourse. I think I'm gonna have to switch that over to.
Okay. It's good. Very good.
That's one thing I don't like about eCore is that they can't post late to a discussion, and I feel like students that have things happen or whatever, they just miss out. You know, I would rather them turn it in late and be engaged in the class than you know, just lock them out of everything. So.
Okay. It's good. Autumn had a good point in the chat. Anna asked a good question. All right. Very good. Very good. Any other questions, Professor Calhoun, directly?
Looks like Anna wants to know how to use checklist.
Yeah, but you're going to send that to her, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. that's not something separate. It's a tool within D2L.
Yeah.
Right. She said, Catherine, will you send a link to checklist? So.
Sorry, I hadn't heard of that one. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I know, but you addressed Catherine, so I'm throwing it on Catherine. So I'll let her do it.
I will take the responsibility. I'll do it.
There you go. Good job. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So let's see. Up next, I had Dr. Traylor. So Jessica Traylor, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
you should be able to share.
Thank you.
Your screen if you like.
I would like.
Perfect.
The discussion issue is something that that I learned from a Q, because I always have students post their initial discussion post early in the week and then the reply post later in the week. And one thing they taught us this summer was to create a weekly rhythm chart. And I think this sort of addresses part of what Valerie was talking about, where students don't know what to do on different days, even when they're at home. And for me, every new semester, I have to come up with a new weekly rhythm because my class schedules change and my responsibilities change. And so I figure if I, being a mostly fully functioning adult, have to take a step back and reassess every semester, I could possibly share a little bit of that wisdom with my students. So this is something I just posted the announcement at the beginning of the semester. Saturday through Monday, here's what I want them to do in D2L. Tuesday, this is a day we were supposed to meet. I taught this high flex. So we were Zoom on Tuesday and we were in person and Zoom on Thursday. So I wanted them to finish reading on Tuesday, submit the initial discussion post. When I do this again next semester, this will be bold and underlined and maybe even italic and probably in a larger font because somehow they still missed it. But, I would post the reminders. And then Wednesday, watch the videos, take the quiz. They had a weekly quiz. They'd get 2 attempts on each one. And then what do we do Thursday through Friday? Review, take the quiz, submit the discussion post. So that was something I offered them. And it was sort of a unique situation with my Intro to Psychology course this past semester. I had 4 sections of intro, which is not very pleasant, but it was necessary. One of them happened to be in person, which turned into high flex, and then the other 3 were purely online asynchronous. And the one great benefit of this COVID semester was to my online intro students, because they were invited to join the Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday. So what for them was supposed to be a purely asynchronous online class ended up having an optional synchronous component. And quite a few of them took advantage of that. Not every week, but a lot of the time. And so I really enjoyed that. I'm going to try to find a way to build in some sort of synchronous component next semester, even for the purely online asynchronous classes, just because I think they appreciate it. Even if it's just once a week office hour with a topic that would appeal to multiple classes. So I think having that option to be synchronously in a space together was really helpful for my students. But that was not the main thing I wanted to share. The main thing I wanted to share were these student active break ideas from a Q. And this is probably very similar again to what Valerie talked about with the small teaching. And this is nothing new. This is nothing you've not heard before or done before. It's just my effort to take some of these tools and put them into an organizational framework. So how are they useful? They break up lectures. You could actually incorporate these into recorded lectures. So, you know, you're talking for 2 or 3 or 5 minutes and you ask the students a question, suggest that they pause, do whatever it is you told them to do, and then come back to the video. Or suggest that they listen to you, and then whatever you're doing then becomes what they're going to write about in their discussion post. So there are lots of ways to use these little tools. They're easy to customize for different levels. This is something I'm going to move toward next semester. So in my classes, students always have a final project of some sort. Like Brenda talked about 140 something final projects. Yes, I was there in the same boat. But I love it. You know, I love seeing their faces on their presentations and hearing their voices. It's one of the highlights of the semester, although it is time consuming. But what I'm going to work toward next semester is building in these small active breaks to scaffold their service learning project that they do at the end, or to scaffold their research presentation that they do in the end. And so I just took a couple of my favorites from the ACU training, and I'm not going to talk about all of them because there's still more people to talk to you after me, and I value your time. But just thinking through some of the activities, I put them in I think sort of an order that makes sense, going from easier to more difficult. And just one of the really common ones that I like to use, especially in Zoom, was this one: complete a sentence. I would just give them something to start with. You know, it could be a definition or a rationale, and they could type it in the chat. Very simple, very, very simple. Now, if I wanted to use that for scaffolding a service learning project, you know, I could say something like, complete the sentence as if you were talking to the community partner that you're going to be working with. Think about your service project. How does this theory work with your service project? Complete the sentence. So just really basic with an imaginary audience focus. I like that one. I like that even as an icebreaker. If any of you were at the diversity, inclusion, equity talks, we did some icebreakers, you know. If you could define diversity in one word, what would it be? Something really simple like that. Another one that I really like is paraphrasing the idea. I don't know about your students, but I know that my students sometimes struggle a little bit with understanding, when do I paraphrase, when do I quote, how do I paraphrase? They don't really understand that. And so I think this is a small effort toward helping them learn academic honesty. You know, what did you read? What did you learn? How can you put it in your own words? And again, this, you can use the imaginary audience frame. If you were talking to a group of 12-year-olds, how would you explain this? If you were at your family dinner over Thanksgiving and you wanted to bring up this topic, what would you say? So anyway, just throwing the imaginary audience in there can really take it to a whole different level. Again, not talking about all of them, just hitting my favorites. This one I really love because it becomes almost hands-on. So for this, you're going to give some sort of content information and then put them in groups with the direction to develop a concept map or a graphic or a picture, and then share it with the class. So this really reminds me of, you know, teaching with manipulatives, with Play-Doh and Legos, and asking my students to build things and share their ideas of how they put the information together in their mind. And an easy way to do this with an online synchronous class is to create a collaborative PowerPoint file. And so you have multiple slides and each group gets one slide. So group 1, group 2, and it's a collaborative document, right? It's a SharePoint link. And so then when we come back together, I've got all of their documents right there in front of me. And I actually did that with a HighFlex session this past semester. So I had students in breakout rooms on Zoom doing it, and the students in class, I had them in pairs, and they had just a handout with that particular slide. And it worked out really, really well. We just transitioned back and forth, sharing online and in class. So I really, really like this one. And most of you probably know Joe Mayo's done some great research on concept maps. And so we know this is an effective strategy. pair group discuss, very similar, except here we're getting ready to have a discussion. So they're prepared. So this is like think, pair, share, like it, but slightly different, where they're outlining their answer and then they're going to come back and share with the class. One thing I did learn with HighFlex is that it's difficult to have a large group discussion with students in person and online at the same time. The only real difficulty is that the students online have a hard time hearing the students in person. So it just takes a little bit longer. You know, I have to paraphrase or restate what they've said or ask them to speak louder, but otherwise it works really well. This kind of thing is excellent for breakout rooms in Zoom, these group discussions. Support a statement. Again, this is just scaffolding research, right? I give them a statement, they go out and find something to support it. Might take 10 minutes, but you know, if your students are like mine, some of them still struggle to find scholarly articles. If I say I need 3 to 5 scholarly references, they still come back with verywellmind.com or Psychology Today or New York Times. Although those are fine, they're not scholarly references. And so this is just a way to scaffold that skill before we get to the final project. And then last but certainly not least, reflection reaction. A big piece of service learning is the reflection. There's volunteering, there's taking your skills out into the community, but when you're truly doing service learning, you've got to reflect on what you did, what you learned, how you applied the content, you know, what you're going to use to move forward. And a lot of that is what we're doing right now. When Rick asked us to prepare these short 3 to 5 minute talks for everyone, that's what he asked us to do. He asked us to reflect on the summer, reflect on the semester, and share what we got, share what we wanted to give to everyone else. So those are my favorites, and I'm sure you all have other tools that could be added to serve the same or similar purpose. So anyway, just want to throw that out there, and that's what I have for you.
Thank you, Jessica. Anyone got any great questions? It's a great job. Thank you so much. Very good information so far. I knew the experts would be coming after me. That's awesome. All right, so I think I asked Professor Pearson. Did I ask you to go next?
It wasn't, but I believe it was Chris after me.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm happy to go
Dr. Beck.
if.
No, let's let Dr. Beck go. Hey, Dr. Beck, one quick thing. Let me make an advertisement. Quick advertisement for Dr. Flatt. If you have any interest in virtual exchange, send Dr. Christy Flatt a note. Okay. So that's my shameless advertisement for Dr. Flatt. Now it's Dr. Beck. You're up, bud. Thank you.
Okay. You have it so I can share. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and you should be able to share.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I focused a little bit more fully on the ACU stuff that I thought was really interesting. I should say, though, that this is not going to be long. I've been fighting a nasty cold for a week and a migraine, so you're lucky I even showed up. I am. It's been tough. Okay. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting in the whole training were the micro lectures. And this is Jessica kind of mentioned them. I think I'll go into a little bit more detail, which you essentially just record a video, a lecture ahead of time. Not a whole hour and 15-minute lecture, because no one will ever watch those. But small, 10 to 15 minutes, maybe less, covering a more specific topic, something that you want the students to really know. Now, you shouldn't do micro lecture after micro lecture after micro lecture videos, because again, students will get tired of them and they won't watch them in the detail that they should. But if you can have these videos every once in a while, it can break up that kind of presentation of the material that you do, so that the students can get a little bit more active. Now, because they're recorded, this does give the students a bit of flexibility. They can watch it at their leisure, hopefully before you can discuss it in the class. But it does allow them to not have to sit there at a particular time to get the information. And I don't know about you, but I noticed this past semester, numerous students would not show up at the scheduled time for the online part of the class. So this just allows them to to schedule themselves a little bit more fully. Now, one of the suggestions is that you can tie these lectures to later discussions. So you're going to cover a particular topic with the micro lecture, and then in class itself, you can encourage the students to discuss it. This then makes the students far more active. As we all know, engaging in active learning is very helpful to students in terms of learning the material. So it is a fairly effective way of really piquing their interest, because it kind of gets to them that if the professor has spent enough time to actually put together a lecture, a small lecture, maybe I should watch it. Now, again, this is in comparison to if you put all your lectures on video, you're talking the whole time for the hour and 15 minutes. They're just not going to watch. They'll get bored, they'll get tired of it. But if you can just do it every once in a while with a small micro lecture, you're going to get them interested in the topic. And that would hopefully help them learn the topic and get them to want to know the rest of the material. Now, a micro lecture like this, structure like this, is generally what we call chunking, in which you present the material in chunks. Now, you don't have to just use micro lectures with chunks, although it's fairly effective. You can do other ways of chunking things, separate it topic by topic that you're covering in your class. But again, you want to keep it small. You don't want to spend the whole time over a particular topic. You want to chunk it up into specific details, and then allow kind of a short break between the chunks. Not to say that the students can go ahead and just leave and do whatever they want, but you kind of force, I don't want to say force, but you encourage them to do a different type of activity that brings that information to play. And when that happens, they're going to know that what occurred in the previous chunk was important, and they'll pay attention, hopefully, I mean, theoretically. And then that will, again, give them that motivation to participate more fully in later activities, whether it be discussions or any variety of active learning techniques that you want to bring in. You can even have them go off into small little subsections and discuss among themselves. All that can work, but I thought it was perhaps the best strategy of all that was presented at this training, that you really want to focus the attention of the students, because they do have problems with that. And you can do that by not overwhelming them with the information, simply by breaking it up, small bits and pieces that they can incorporate into their own learning in a better way. Now, so why should you use it? Because the literature is pretty clear. Students' attention span at most is 15 minutes, usually about 10 minutes, but you might stretch it to 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, they're just going to stop paying attention. You know, there are exceptions. You're going to have the better students who will be more motivated, who want to learn. They'll be there, they'll pay attention the whole time. But you want to really get at those students who might have that problem with paying attention in class or online or any other function. So if you can do it in a 10 to 15 minute length and then kind of break it up a little, you're going to refocus their attention for each particular piece. So you're not going to have to worry about them just getting bored, doodling, or whatever else they're going to do, because it keeps their attention focused on what you're talking about. Now, this can be a lecture. I know these days that a lot of people are anti-lecture in academia, but lectures, if done well, can be very engaging and can present a lot of information. In fact, a lot of students do actually prefer lectures, just because they like that sort of presentation of information. So breaking it up is going to bring forth all those key points that you want them to learn. The thing is, of course, it does require effort. You can't just sit in front of your computer and talk. It's got to be more active. It's got to be more interesting. You have to get them to pay attention. And the way you do that is by making your lecture more active or your activities more inclusive, and get them to really take part in the class. Because when they do, they're going to learn more. At least that's what the literature suggests. So there are problems with this, as there are problems with all forms of teaching. Perhaps the biggest one is you're going to have some students who aren't going to pay attention to the micro lectures or to the chunks. I don't know about you, but I've had students I know who would turn on Blackboard Collaborate for the class part and then would go and do something else. And when the class was over and I was ready to log off, I'd have that list of 2 or 3 students who are still logged on, even though everyone else had logged off. And I knew they just put it on to make it look like they are in class. That's going to be a problem. So you're going to have to be very careful. Again, that's why making the lectures, making the activities more engaging, more active, will encourage them to pay attention more fully and perhaps even, bother to watch the lectures. And again, if it's a mini lecture, they're not going to feel like they're taking up an hour of their time to go over what they could just learn from the notes of the textbook. Of course, the other problem is students aren't necessarily going to pay attention all the time. They have a lot of other things in their lives, as we've talked about today. And that makes learning a lot more difficult for many of them. So you got to keep that in mind when doing this. And when you do your assessments, your quizzes, or your tests, you got to keep in mind that, not all of them are going to be as fully informed as you would like. And of course, the other big problem with the micro lectures and the chunking is that it's going to really require you to do a radical review of how you teach. And it's going to require you to think about what topics can I make into small little lectures? What topics can I make into small little activities? What can I do to make this whole system work. But I think that it is beneficial. Of everything, I really think that that has the potential to get the students more engaged in the class. And that is, after all, what we want them to be, engaged. So with more engagement comes, of course, more learning. And I think the last thing, because again, I'm ready to clap here. I thought that was an interesting little, and I wish that was true.
Thank you, Chris, for taking time for us. And very nice, very apropos. Anyone have a question for Chris? Very good. I know there's a lot of literature about this idea. It does take a lot of work. I know Samantha Bishop addressed that. A number of us are looking at this as an important way to deliver courses. So anyway, thank you, Chris. We've got a little time left. We're doing pretty good. Tony, your time, brother.
Hello.
Yes.
Dr. Calhoun, if you would, I got kicked off a while back, and I lost my co-host status.
There you are, sir. There
Thank
you
you
are.
so much. I was afraid I was going to have to try to phone in on my classic flip phone, and luckily I was able to get back on. So this semester was a booger. I taught my theater appreciation course online that I've been teaching online for several years. So that was fairly comfortable territory, but I did try some new things there. I was teaching a colloquium that I took in like a super high flex model, and I was teaching my stagecraft course, which is smaller, but very, very hands-on and very face-to-face. And I tried some different things in all of there. But basically, I guess the two things I'll focus on here is I did some work to try to actively build community, and I'm talking about how I was more flexible this semester than I've ever been before. So the first thing I did is sort of a virtual version of that thing where you ask your students to come by your office and visit with you at the beginning of the semester. So I required each one of my students to book some time with me, and we met in our Blackboard room, and I did this in all of my classes. And I gave them 3 questions. I wanted them to tell me what they hoped to get out of the class, anything they were nervous or excited about, and this was the part that was really important. If there's anything that they wanted me to know about them that would let me be a better instructor for them. And, you know, most folks were like, oh, nope, I'm good. But I did learn a lot more about them. It's very easy when you're in this online format for them to be just a name, depending on how deeply they engage with the course. And this, you know, this let me know I had some students who were working multiple jobs, who were taking care of kids. You know, one told me that he was working on his rap career while he was going through college. So I mean, that let me put something human with each of my students from the outset, which I found was really helpful. The other thing I did is I relied on video notes where possible. I talked in another presentation earlier in the semester about Loom, which was an app that lets you do a screenshot, it lets you record a video, and you can send this video very easily to your students. It gives you statistics on who viewed it, which I'm not gonna lie, it's a little depressing. You know, I might have sent it to 20 something people, and sometimes I'd be lucky if 9 watched it. So there was that. But like that standard discussion board, introduce yourself, I had them do it by video, and I kicked it off. and I felt like that was a good thing in terms of the health of my classes this semester. I did feel like I think I was more accessible, or at least was perceived as more accessible than I maybe put off before. A lot of times I scare students with my eyebrows when I think I look like I'm angry. And I actually had students thanking me for how the class was going, which is not common. So that was probably one of the most important things I did, and I did it in, like I said, in each of my classes. As far as flexibility was concerned, I've got two things here. The colloquium, this approach was honestly born out of fear, because at the start of the semester, I was absolutely convinced that we were all going to be, and I was scared of COVID. So basically what I wanted to do was de-incentivize attendance, physical attendance. I made it clear everyone was welcome to come to their face-to-face session, but I basically made this colloquium, which was very much a seminar class. It was, we were reading plays and we were talking about them and writing about them. So it wasn't like there were no lectures. So what I did is I made everyone have to do the same writing prompt each week. But then you had to participate in a discussion. And you could do that by coming face to face. You could come and jump on the Blackboard, you know, and I always turned my camera around so it was like they were sitting in the room with us. Or if, you know, they had stuff going on, they could jump on and do asynchronous discussion board. So they had 3 different ways they could participate in the conversation. And there were parts of it that I really liked. But I will say that as an experiment, I'm not sure how it went, because I did find that that mostly I had people on Blackboard ultimately, which I was okay with, but I did have the wall of black screens and names, and I got real. You know, I know the conventional wisdom is we don't ask them to turn on their cameras, and I didn't require them to use their mics either. So I had people conversing through the chat, which if you want to get a sense of how insecure you are, throw out a discussion question and then have that lag before something pops up. And then you're like, oh, that's a great point, Christy. What about this? Boop, and then it comes, you know. So that was very different. And so one of the things I'll be doing in terms of, you know, spring is sort of trying to find a middle ground there. You know, I think I definitely want to increase how many people show up. And the other thing is I was more flexible with deadlines than I've ever been before. My typical late policy is if you turn it in late, it's a 0. But if you ask for an extension before it's due, you're gonna get it. I've told my students for years that I'm a pushover for an extension. And what I found as I got into the semester, I mean, y'all, I had one student who was in 2 of my classes and didn't realize it. Like in her head, it was just one class. And for me, I started thinking, and several of y'all have heard me say this, we'd never advise our students to take this much online content in one semester. And so for me, I decided I would try to be very flexible with deadlines and understanding, I guess. And for the most part, I felt like that was successful. you know, I didn't have very many people failing just because they didn't do their work in the end, which is often the case. I think that had I not been more flexible with that and giving people a second chance, I did open up some of my assignments towards the end. I gave them a week to make things up, and a lot of them took advantage of it. Not take advantage of it, but they did it, and I felt like it was a good thing in the end. So where I am with that is, like I said, you know, I didn't have very many people failing just for not doing the work. But I also think that probably created a sort of loop where they went, well, I know Pearson will give me a chance, so I can put him down on the bottom of the priority pile. And I've been trying to reflect about how I feel about that, because on one hand, there's the ego that I have that's like, you should take my class seriously. But the reality is, you know, if I'm teaching theater appreciation, it's important, no doubt. But it's not a life skill that they have to master to take this class. So if knowing that I'll be more flexible in this class will let them do better in their biology class, I think I'm okay with that. Because I think in the end that's lets them be more successful overall. Where there's some folks that took advantage of it and it didn't go well, yes. But all in all, I felt pretty good about it. And finally, I took my stagecraft class and I created new lecture content for it. You're welcome. And I was again trying to reduce the footprint physically in the shop for this class, because this is where I teach construction and tool usage. So it's there's no way to do this virtually. So what I did was I tried to create some brief lectures about some of the tools and what they're for and how to use them, that would kind of allow for when we did our face-to-face meetings for us to just get right into demonstrating and, you know, trying to figure out how to stand 6 feet apart in the shop and still be able to see everything. And I tried, let me see. I'll try to share briefly, just to give you a sense. What I tried to do is make them more visually engaging. And so I'll show you real quickly something from theater appreciation, which is the sort of a typical PowerPoint with the talking head, and then something I experimented with for stagecraft. So let's see. Oh my God. I always get so nervous when I'm trying to share. Okay.
Y'all don't look at the eyebrows while he's doing it, right?
I'm very mad at all of you. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. So here's a micro lecture from my theater appreciation course. And again, I won't make you watch much of it, just to give you a sense of what we're doing. Pre-production is where all of the groundwork is laid out for the show. Here, the producer, director, and creative team figure out what the production is going to be. But first, let's talk a little bit about the role of the producer and the director. Now, the producer can be a person, a group of people, or an institution. Okay, so you can see I did these corny little clips. I was very excited because previously I had been setting up our camera in a classroom and talking just in the light of the projector. So I took advantage of, you know, with my iPad, I could go anywhere. So that's what I had for theater appreciation. And this is, I was kind of in a frantic process here because I was trying to turn these videos out very quickly. I got behind. So here I am at my kitchen table, but you can see visually this is a little different.
So in this video, we're going to look at tools that take things apart
Here we'll learn about the pry bar or flat bar, the crowbar, the glorious sledgehammer. That's a little nasty the way I did that, I'm sorry. The rubber mallet, the vice grips, and the pliers. The crowbar and the pry bar are incredibly useful tools. So that's so dorky. But that
awesome.
So that way, instead of it being the PowerPoint, it's the text is right there in the middle of all of it. I did that with Video Shop, which is an app that is available for your iPads. And it's, yeah, and they added a ton of sound effects and royalty-free song clips you could do. All sorts of filters. So I mean, it's a very intuitive drag and drop editing program. By the way, trying to time out the font and the words, that took more time than I would have liked. But that's sort of the direction I'm going in trying to create new micro lectures. And I don't know. This semester was, like I say, this was a beast. And when Dr. Calhoun asked us to talk about what we learned, I was like, to not cry all the time, I don't know. So that's me.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Thought that was an awesome video, actually. Anybody got any questions for Professor Pearson? Okay, I know it's getting late, but I know Autumn's got something to share for us because she has everything to share that's useful. So Autumn, did I lose you? Did she leave us?
Nope, I'm here.
Waiting on her turn.
Yeah, I'm right here. Okay, so the first thing I want to share with you guys, I'm going to drop this link into the chat area as well. So a lot of you all mentioned, different videos and different tools that you wanted to learn to use. And so I dropped a link in the chat. So this is the YouTube channel that I've created that I continue to add videos onto. And so you can kind of see, if you go to the link and you go to playlists, I've tried to organize them the best I can. I'll be adding more, and I probably need to break some of these out a little bit further. But if you're interested in like the web conferencing tool like Zoom or Ultra, you can look under that playlist. If you use integrations like the Pearson or the Cengage or any of those integrations, the links are there. If you want to learn about just general D2L tools, those are there. Proctoring has its own little channel. And then, so in the chat area, some of us mentioned tools like Edpuzzle or Screencast-O-Matic or non-native D2L tools. And you can find those videos here under Web Tools and Apps. And there's lots of different videos here. There's 33 videos in this area that you can scroll through and find just different things that you can use either in the classroom for hybrid or for online. So those are all there. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. So the second thing, while I get my other share up, the second thing that I just wanted to note is a lot of people talked about making videos, and a lot of people will ask me about that. And one thing that I tell them is, don't make a goal for yourself to create videos for every single thing this semester. That's just going to be too much, and it's going to put a lot of workload on you because videos do take a while to create. So what I would suggest you do is make a list of all the topics that you teach and go through and highlight them as either very hard concepts for your students to understand based upon what they've learned of your experience in the past, middle ground, or just really easy concepts. And start making your videos on the concepts that are really hard. Make those videos first so that you can really detail those out. And then later on, you may or may not choose to make a video for a really easy concept. You might be able to have just text or something for that. So that's what I would do when you're planning out how to make your videos. I wouldn't just tackle them and say, I'm going to make all the videos this semester, because you're going to get overwhelmed. So just pick the hardest ones first. And so my last thing is interactivity in synchronous sessions that you can do live with your students. So a lot of people did hybrid or high flex models where they met live with their students. So I'm used to doing asynchronous online classes to where you don't meet live. But I have been playing with the liveness. I think Dr. Beck noted that, you know, it is very easy for students to just log in and kind of walk away, do their laundry, pet their dog, whatever. And I, you know, have seen that myself. And then Dr. Traylor also gave you lots of ideas for interactives that you could use in Ultra or other web conferencing systems. So a couple of those is make sure to use the polling tool that is built into most web conferencing systems. Ultra, Zoom, all have a polling. You can use survey like questions like, how do you feel about this topic, or did you do the background reading for this topic, or if you took a test about this topic right now, how well do you think you would score? So survey like questions, as well as formative assessments. So every couple of slides have a little question that pops up that just asks them, you know, are you following along, or actually ask them a question about the content so that you can kind of gauge, are they following along, are they getting the concept, do I need to review, that kind of thing. And so this is what polling looks like in Ultra. If you do the purple slide out on the bottom right, there'll be a little polling right there, and you can choose to do yes or no polling, or you can choose to actually type in a question, and it'll pop up right there for your students. And then you can allow them to see the results. So you can say, okay, well, we all answered this question correctly, let's move on. Or you know what, we have five people answer it incorrectly. It doesn't tell you who they are, but it just lets you know that some people were missing the concept. So let's unpack this and see what misconceptions are there at this point about this topic. So that's an easy way to use the polling tool. Another one, some of the strategies, and it's very similar to what Dr. Traylor was talking about, are some strategies that you can use in the classroom as well as online. And these strategies come from Dr. Bell, who is a literacy teacher in the School of Education. And so you have the classic KWL chart. Now what's great is when if you upload this as a PowerPoint file, the students in Ultra or in Zoom or what have you can actually write on this screen with you. So they can write on the screen, they can voice talk it and you write it in, or they can type it into the chat. Either which way, they get it done. They can use a true false meter, which this is great for checking if they have done their pre-reading. So what they do is they put their initials, they use the annotate tool in the session, and they put their initials by yes or no. So you have statements here that are either true or false, and they agree with them, yes or no, are they true or false? And that's a way to kind of check their pre-reading skills and keep them engaged, because again, the whole goal of this is to have them engaging with the content so that they aren't just walking away and playing with their dog or doing their laundry or whatever. This one is one where you would use the annotate tool to where you would like circle. You could either color code it or draw a line. And so, you know, Lincoln is most associated to which of these? 1914 is most associated with which of these? Jefferson Davis is most associated with which of these? So you can color code it or have them draw a line. And that way they're actually interacting with the content rather than you just giving them this as a test or just telling them. So I'll go through a couple more. This one's one of my favorites. You can actually play this as a game in the classroom as well. You can play it two different ways. You can either guess the topic. So you give them a list. So you would say Orwell, Big Brother, Doublethink. So what does this go with? What topic is this? And they would say, well, it's 1984, the book. Or you can have them add a word. So you say interphase, prophase, anaphase. Add us another word that would fit with these. You can also, of course, do the which one of these doesn't belong, and you can have one that doesn't belong. And so this is a game you can play in the classroom, or you can have it up on your screen and they can draw it out, write it out, that kind of thing on your screen in Ultra. You have your mind map, which is similar to what Dr. Traylor was talking about with the concept maps. You also have the closed passage, and when I would do my micro lectures and when I would have my, when Dr. Bishop was talking about her notes that she would have, the outline that they would fill out as they take notes, I tend to do a lot of these closed passages, to where basically I give them the statements and they have blanks to fill out. And then as they go through the lecture, they fill in the blanks, and then they have a set of notes right there to a T written out of exactly what they need. So you can have them fill these out. You can also have them do a race to where two people have the pen at the same time and different colors, and then they race to see who can figure out who can fill out the closed passage the fastest. in the ultra session. And this one is where you have the words and they have to write the importance of it, or you can flip-flop it to where you have the importance and they have to write the word. Again, this can be a game to where you split the class and it's color-coded. You know, the red group writes in red, the blue group writes in blue. It can be something that they text chat, it can be something that they physically write, or it can be something that they just say. So, but again, all these are designed to keep people engaged. And so when we're talking a little bit about discussions, this is another way that you can do discussions in the classroom or online in the classroom synchronously. So you would have a question. So this one is basically about Dr. Frankenstein and you know, whether or not accepting the monster would have caused the monster to not be as emotionally or physically detrimental to the rest of the world. And so you would put your initials by true or false. Do you agree with that statement or not? And then you can go ahead and call on people to explain why. Another thing that you can use is if you just Google random name picker or random name wheel, if you have trouble with people volunteering, you can actually have a list of all your students typed out and just copy in and paste their first names or their initials into the random picker wheel, and it will randomly pick a name so that, you know, they all kind of have to be on their toes, because in here I would say, okay, put your initials, put in the random picker. Okay, Jane got picked. Okay, so Jane, tell me. So Jane's got to be on her cue right there, listening, following along, because you don't know who we're going to call on. So that's the way to make sure that they are following along as well. This one I like, and it's been helpful, especially with even the writing process, to where you have a problem and you have to decide whose problem is it. So, you know, not all students have computers or internet to participate in virtual learning. That's our problem. Whose problem is it? Well, it's the student's problem, it's the school's problem, it's the professor's problem. So we have to determine whose problem it is. We come up with 3 different solutions and the pros and cons to each of those solutions, and then what is the best solution and why. So this helps them in the writing process, but it also helps them thinking through issues that come up in your different courses, in your different subject areas. So this can be something you fill out online. It can also be something that you turn into an assessment that they turn in to D2L. And then you can just pick a discussion to where you have a random name picker, and then you just say, okay, number 1, you're going to talk about flexible seating next time. Random name picker, that's going to be Jane, and so on and so forth. So that's a way you can pick one. And you can have the flow chart timeline going through to where you have this drawn out in PowerPoint when you share your screen, and they can just walk through these, and you can fill out the timeline either as a group or individually. And then this one's one of my favorites, which is the choice wheel. And this is where you have a question. So like a student is being disruptive in class, what do you do? And you have a choice wheel of 1, 2, 3, 4 possibilities. And then you can poll them and have them poll which one they would do. And so maybe poll is number 3. Okay, well, most people said they would do number 3. Why is that? The least amount of people said that they would do number 1. Why is that? And again, the whole goal of this is just to keep them engaged in doing different activities. You don't have to do your whole PowerPoint as this. You might actually have some lecture content, and then just sporadically, every couple of slides, maybe have some type of activity like this sprinkled in, just so that they get the ability to engage, they get the ability to interact, and then that should hopefully cut down on people just logging in and walking away. And so that's really my three things that I wanted to share today is, you know, the link to the YouTube video that I think I put in the chat, and then the link to the YouTube channel, just a little statement about videos, because I have a lot of people ask me about videos and they get overwhelmed really quickly with the videos. And then again, just these little tools that you can use as well. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Autumn. Questions? We made Dr. Burstein happy. He wanted some discussion about things going on in the synchronous type class, and I'm glad Autumn shared some things, and Jessica as well. I don't know how many people taught a class that was truly, you know, all online in a synchronous manner. You know, I'm not aware of the numbers. I know we do not classify classes across the campus in that regard. I think there is some effort on the system level for us to yes, Dr. Burstein puts in the chat, we need to. I would agree. I would agree that's a discussion we need to have on the campus and as a system to try to do that. So, any other questions for us? Listen, I know it's been a long term. I've heard in numerous meetings and seminars that it must have been the longest term on record. Everyone is noting that it seems like there's a 24/7 thought that will be available for students. And it's very difficult. So I appreciate your effort this term. If I haven't said it before, I appreciate everyone's effort at becoming certified through Autumn's training, which she did a fabulous job with. I know we're going to get new tools in the future. We'll probably have new tools coming on this next semester. Please let's continue this type of at least thought of having meetings where we share things. Now I know I focused it on the 8 people. I would certainly like to think we can do that and broaden this group and broaden the discussion, because so many of you have so many good ideas. I know we've done those things at Teaching Matters, and I think we should just continue to do it, whether it's through CETL, through just informal discussion, through some kind of meeting we're asked to put together like this, to keep pushing this idea of improving our teaching online and for the purpose of teaching high flex. So anyone else got a comment?
I do.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I just want to say that the presenters were fabulous. I truly appreciated it, and I've learned quite a bit. Thank you for having this presentation today. As some of you know, some of you may not, I've been working for years, and I've had a 2-hour commute each way for a year. So actually moving into this virtual space really helps me connect. I connect when I'm on campus, but I'm realizing that I'm able to connect and engage in more activities and more events. Even my wife realized that. She said, "You know what? I forgot how beautiful your eyes were, because when you come off the road, they're half asleep, and they've been half asleep for years." So it's really, I've really enjoyed this opportunity. Of course, I want to learn more, and I want to be a more effective online educator. So I'm excited to hear more and engage more. But I think that we're on the right track, and I also think that I'm not the only one that probably drives the distance. But I believe having these spaces and these opportunities, and as we mature our virtual space, we also become more attractive to both students and faculty. So, I mean, I think I made a short story long, but just thank you.
Listen, thank you, Dr. Johnson. You're absolutely right. I think we've improved our meeting ability this term. I know I'm somewhat tired of meetings. Unless the provost tells me to call another meeting, we won't have any more faculty meetings. I know we've got some more administrative meetings. But listen, I've gotten used to it, and it certainly is a great way to communicate and to deliver some important things like what we did today. So I appreciate all those who shared, all those who attended the summer session this summer. Thank you for your time. And look, if I'm going to leave you with anything, I'll leave you with this. Come on. There's my screen. There you go. Happy holidays. If you need me for anything, you want to make a comment, want to send me some feedback, please do. I believe we recorded this session, and I'll try to find it. Dr. Higgins is sharing some joy and laughter. So I hope
It was-
hope your rest of your week's great. Now
It
I
was
won't
great,
close-
Rick. Great
I'm
job.
gonna walk away, but I'm gonna stop my video. I won't close this if y'all want to stay around and have a party and chat and do all kinds of stuff online. But I'm gonna do a couple other things before I end the meeting. So thanks.